Hello, everyone. This is Rem, standing in as your host again for another Senate podcast. We are going to bring you the larger one where we're bringing some of our more knowledgeable players in to talk about the game in general and where we're headed. With us tonight, we have, of course, my partner in crime, Brax Nightfinder.
How we doing tonight?
And then with us is everyone's favorite person to go to for advice and information, Lab Monkey. Welcome, as always. You keep throwing down great content for all.
I was promised bananas. Where are the bananas?
No. We're going to give you some pineapple on pizza.
Okay, that works.
And then we have somebody joining us tonight that I'm really excited to be able to talk to, and that's Meadulator.
Hey, thanks.
Why
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? You probably haven't been able to introduce yourself, so give us all a little rundown.
Sure. So I'm an officer in Endor. A still fairly recent account. I've been playing for about 2.5 years. So I've got a long way to go. I became an officer in Endor just over a year ago. My anniversary was about a week ago. I mostly take care of the recruiting there, and I try my best to be competitive.
Well, I think we can all say you are actually very competitive, and you have definitely made your mark within the recruiting circles within our alliance and within your guild. So we are very happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
So tonight we have an agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the alliance and guild health. We're going to discuss Datacrons because that is the newest thing that has really rocked the SWGOH world. And then we're going to talk about the game health moving forward and then finish this discussion with, Omnicrons, which are, we've talked about before, but it's the new thing in the game that just keeps kind of changing the meta constantly. So let's start off with guild health, and that goes to or guild and alliance health. Let's go to Brax and let him kind of give this discussion moving forward. He is probably one of the most involved in this subject within our alliance.
So, as the game ever evolves, obviously the alliance and guilds individually have a lot more challenges. I think it's safe to say that the introduction of Datacrons scared the hell out of everybody. And I think within the alliance, we saw a lot of turnover. Each individual guild, I think they saw people reaching that point where they were just like, I don't think I can be competitive anymore. And even, quite a few of the guilds have had switches in guild leaders. They've either stepped down or retired from the game. And I think almost everybody here has witnessed that. But all of that aside, I think the alliance continues to still be strong. We've been able to bolster our 24 guilds, and then we're even talking about considering, like, do we start another starter beginning game guild? So I don't think that as a whole we're in any kind of like panic mode or anything like that. Obviously the Datacron thing like really pushed some people to points where they weren't sure where the game was going to go. But I think it's safe to say that, as CG introduces new things, sort of this panic is cyclical in that it comes back around, and people are afraid, like, is the game ruined now? Is I'm not never going to be able to keep up, which, when you come to the realization that that's how this game is designed, that's how CG built this game, was to make you feel like you're never caught up and that you need to, buy the newest cool thing or whatever. Like when you come to that realization, that as they introduce these new things, like you can't let that bother you. You can't let that make you feel like you're behind, because I guarantee you're behind. Everybody's behind, whether you're in Mandalore or whether you're in, one of the newer guilds. Like, you're behind. You're always going to be behind. And if you think that you're going to get caught up, then the game will burn you out.
Well, so Brax mentioned Mandalore and that. How are you as Mandalore dealing with the change? And I know you're going to talk more to this, Lab, but how has your guild reacted to the changes and adjusting to the new competitive balance?
Well, I would say in Mandalore we've actually been very, very fortunate in the fact that the way that we run our guild is very attractive to enough good players that we tend to not really have problems with not being able to fill spots. So it's undeniable, like Breck said, that there have been some retirements and some shuffling. I mean, even within our own guild, right? Our longtime leader, Thol, he stepped down as GL, and he retired for about a week before he realized that he wanted to still play. So he basically kind of took a step back in terms of his involvement. Like, he's technically not even an officer right now. He is, quote unquote, just a member, even though, I mean, he still has all the access to all of our officer channels, and he still participates just like he was an officer. And it's just that he doesn't have the title or, the actual heavy-handed responsibilities now. So,
can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure. Go for it.
Thol is one of the founding members of this alliance. I think that was great information for everyone to hear. The alliance hasn't lost Thol. He is still with us.
He is. Yep. He's I mean, he still enjoys the game. He's been playing it for almost since it started. I think he's maybe a few months later than when the game actually started. But yeah, I mean, it's been a part of his life for the better part of 6 years. And so, yeah, that's a hard thing to walk away from, especially something that you enjoy doing. So
I think that you really appreciated calling him a member there too.
Well, you would probably blush at the number of times we've called him a member or some sort of synonym in our chats, even before he stepped down. But anyways, so yeah, I talk about Thol to say, even at the very top of our alliance, we've had shakeups, right? And that's a natural part of this game. But Mandalore, as I was saying, is we play the game right, in my opinion, in terms of a competitive guild. We don't do the super hardcore thing that burns people out, but we also are, we kick ass too. Like, we put in just the amount of effort and time that is required to kick ass without hitting that burnout phase. That's always been our mantra, and so that's really served us well. So just to give you guys an idea of where Mandalore is, we not only are we 50 out of 50 on our members, but we have a waiting list of like 2 or 3 people that are trying to get in because they don't like whatever guild they're in, outside of the alliance, and they've heard really good things about our guild from our members that have connections. So yeah, Mandalore's doing great. Retirements will always happen. and we always just push forward.
Well, and I think that is a valid point to bring up, in that where you said that you feel like you play the game right, and the thing is that as guild leaders, you have to be able to understand like the makeup of your guild. And so, when you have people that are getting burnt out, like, you kind of have to look in the mirror a little bit and saying, are we pushing too hard? Are we not pushing hard enough? Or, what do we need to fine tune to make sure that we stay intact? And, I think that's, a great point there, is that, you feel like you've got your competitiveness dialed in to where it needs to be, to make people feel like they're, still making strides, they're still invested in the game, but they also don't feel like that they are glued to their phone or their device to, play the game. And I think that's kind of like the Rubik's Cube as a guild leader and leadership team that you have to figure out with your guild. And I think, like, when people start to get burnt out, like, as guild leaders, like, you have to kind of converse with them and just like, hey, I understand it's, challenging, it's difficult. This is how we see our guild moving forward. And letting them know that you feel like they can be part of that as well. And I think you might be able to help at least somewhat mitigate those people that start to feel that way. You're always going to have people ready to retire, but hopefully, especially as we go forward, like, I think a lot of people have been playing this game for a long time, so you want them to still kind of feel that passion that they had for the game and for Star Wars.
So I'd love to interject one quick point before we hear from Meadulator, because I think his response on this will be really interesting too, from Endor's
that's
point
where I
of
was
view.
going next.
But what I would like to say to kind of piggyback off what you were talking about, Brax, is that as guild leaders, I think one of the best barometers for how well you're doing leading your guild is, especially during phases like this, where you're kind of, you're losing some players to retirement, it's inevitable, but what kind of players are you attracting? And what are they saying about your guild a few months in after they've been recruited? So just to give a quick example, we recruited two members from another guild. Actually, they bounced around a couple times. So their names are Obi-Rod and Fooster. We actually recently added them as officers because they're both really great players and have still, a strong passion for, competing and excelling in the game. And they came from a guild. I forget which guild they came from originally. I want to say it was like, maybe it was Night's Watch or some other guild. I don't know. Some super high GP guild that just was terrible at territory wars for their GP. And, as competitive players who like territory wars, they were really looking for a way out. And they wanted to come join us, but we didn't have any room at the time. So they went and joined one of the Shadowlands guilds, Mad Claw. And they were there for a few months. And then they found out that we had a couple openings, and they asked to join us again. And this was the reason that they heard about us was because we we kicked their ass in TW, like, really sound. And so, yeah, that was the initial thing that, like, caused them to want to come over, I think. Hopefully I'm not misremembering this, but we destroyed them in Territory War, and they were like, hey, can we join your guild? Because you guys actually run Territory War the way we want to play the game. So anyways, just a quick anecdote. Shout out to those guys, because they're doing awesome for us in our guild. They're adding a lot to us in terms of, like, competitive Territory War planning and execution. So, but yeah, look at the types of people that you're adding, and see what they're saying about your guild after they've experienced it for a little while, and that'll tell you a lot about how you're running your guild as a leader.
All right, so Meadulator, what's been your experience?
Yeah, Datacrons came out, and I think that it was actually a really good opportunity for Endor. Endor has been really pushing up and trying to be more competitive, and we'll kind of get into it more with Datacrons, but they kind of put all the guilds on the equal level, and like as accounts that were in the game for a long time, with like mods and roster development, those are things that take a long time to fix. And Datacrons were kind of a place where we're all on the equal ground, and Endor just like took off running. And when we kind of look at the number, like how our like players have been really like investing in Datacrons and what that has meant for like our TW matches and like competitive, like how we are playing competitively, it's been really impressive. Like right across the board, we've seen pretty much all of our players invest in Datacrons, and then when TWs roll around, like we won our last 10, and they're like the matches are getting more and more lopsided. We've had some players drop out. We've been able to replace them. It's we haven't like our overall our turnaround, like our turnover has been like touch wood, but very minimal in the last 3 months since Datacrons came out. I think there was definitely some people who were kind of said like looking for a reason, and Datacrons came out, and that was their reason. And we've been able to replace them. And overall, Endor is very healthy and competing kind of at the highest level so far. So very happy with where we are right now. Scarif is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying Scarif is knocking on the door. So hopefully, if all things line up, we can get a TW matchup with Scarif one of these weeks.
That'd be sweet.
I was just going to say to your point about being able to replace people easily. You know, anybody in the alliance that is privy to the recruitment room knows that there is not, you know, we're not lacking in people showing up looking for a guild. So, you know, I think the interest is still there. People are, you know, searching for those guilds that are going to be competitive and are going to still fit their playing style and everything like that. So, you know, it's not like this mass exodus of everybody playing the game is happening. I think it's just a little bit of a shakeup, and to use Lab's point, like the ones that aren't doing it right are losing people, and the ones that are doing it right are, you know, they've got their hands full and they've got, you know, everything that they want. So.
Well, so I will piggyback on that a little bit. I'll talk about the experience of, shall we say, some of the newer level guilds. As everyone knows, I run ÇTHE, which is over 150 million GP guild. One of our recent starter guilds that's grown very well. And Datacrons didn't affect us as you would expect. At the lower ends, Datacrons are not really overly obtainable. You're not yet able to necessarily engage the content where you can build them greatly. But at that level, there are a lot of players, such as the account that I run there, that do have access to them. But interestingly enough, it hasn't really changed the passion that I've seen within the guild when they do face something of that nature. Now, in Mustafar, it's been a little bit different. To the point that everyone's made, I don't think Mustafar even took a speed bump from Datacrons. Brax, correct me if I'm wrong. Have we lost a player since Datacrons were introduced?
I don't believe so. I can't even tell you the last time we had to replace a member.
And that's a lot because, we're not as competitive as Mandalore or Forest of Endor, but we provide very good rewards and a home for people that are looking to enjoy the game on a at least semi-competitive level. We do provide comparable rewards, But we're also very well aware of how these changes affect people. And I think that's where a lot of members sometimes forget about the work that their officers do. Like they're dealing with this controversy of a new thing being thrown in and the extra pressure that's being put on them, and officers are trying to tell them, yeah, we're going to manage this situation, we got this, don't worry, we'll figure out how to make this work for us. But then on the flip side, we're trying to actually manage the situation and figure out how it works for us. And I think the good guilds are the ones that can manage both sides of that.
Definitely.
Well, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, the one that caused that conversation to come up, and that's Datacrons. And Meadulator, I think that's you.
Yeah. So Datacrons came to the game like 3 months ago. They rotate every month. Each month has kind of brought us one or two super teams that kind of have the T. So there has like the 3 levels, right? The T3, they're just dark side or light side, kind of like the first choice on the Datacron, and then the next one will be like for a team. If like you're a younger player and you haven't kind of come across these yet, you'll kind of, the T6 will be, okay, this is a Rebel one, this is a Jedi one, this is a Sith one. And then the kind of like the T9, it takes a lot of investment, a lot of resources go into it, but then that will be a specific character. And that character has to be R7. And these, half of them are almost useless. But the other half are extremely good and very much meta defining. So kind of with each set, there's been 1 or 2 kind of very important GL Datacron that's come out. So they're only, up until this point, they rotate out after 3 months. So we're kind of getting to the place right now where the first set is a couple weeks away from leaving the game. And that set was really like the JMK and the Rey were the kind of the 2 main GLs that were really propped up by the first set. And I mean, Rey was always a defensive GL, but really turned into you need a answer for this GL and it needs to be good, or else she's just going to smoke you and she's going to have 200% health steal and she's never going to die. So I think on a competitive level, Datacrons have really introduced a lot of like flexibility to the kind of the meta, and it's changed it on like a monthly basis on what are your defensive teams, what are your offensive teams. For guilds like Endor and Mandalore, these became very much a necessity to anyone who wants to live in Kyber 1 or Kyber 2. Some players are still ignoring it, but it really seems like Kyber 1 and Kyber 2 Datacrons are going to become very important. I don't know, like I live in, like my account is in Kyber 2. I don't have much experience below that. My guess is they haven't at the lower levels. You're not seeing them, or you might see like a lower level Datacron. I think Datacrons were like CG's big answer to Conquest and to get engagement going in Conquest. So all the resources, most of the resources you get for Datacrons are coming out of Conquest. It looks to be like that is their way to make sure players engage with Conquest for 14 days. And they don't just blow through it in 7 days and then get the red box and then don't look at their phone, don't look at Conquest again. This is making sure people are logging into Conquest for 14 days at a competitive level. I think, like my experience, they've been extremely important and fun for some. Like I get to use squads that, like JML is now my arena squad. JMK was living in arena for a very long time. And now I get to use JML because the JKL Datacron is super busted and I can kill a whole team before the other guys even move. It's definitely a meta defining, it's changing the whole meta of the game. How are you guys are you finding it affecting your GAC matchups?
Well,
Lab? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'll speak for myself. So in JAC or GAC, it really hasn't affected a ton. But that's partly because of the level of GAC I've chosen to sort of live in. I mean, I don't. I'm not going to sit there. I'm not at a place where I'm going to research my opponent and figure out how to maximize my GAC. I just enjoy the level. I enjoy the gameplay as much as I have time for on a daily basis. TW is where it's probably affected us the most, and the reality was early on it really hurt. We started in both my guilds. We started facing teams that were putting those Omnicrons on or Datacrons on, and really tripping up the game.
Struggling.
But once we started figuring that out, it really hasn't. It really hasn't changed much. I'd actually say Mustafar has figured out how to put together a defensive strategy that is more effective now before than what we were putting out before Datacrons. So I'm not overly intimidated by them, but I do have issues with them on some level in the sense that it still tends to be a very pay to play sort of option. Um, I think you have the competitive guilds that the that CG is making a ton of money on because everyone feels like they have to buy them. And then you have the normal guilds where we're trying to go free to play and we just put together the best we can on the best players that are available during that series. I don't know. I'm sure Lab has a much more succinct version of this.
Oh, Datacrons are all over the place. They affect like everything now. So I'll try to make it succinct. I can say general trends. Datacrons, the lower level guild or player or like level of GAC that you're at, the less they affect you.
Yes.
Generally speaking. I would say, playing as a player that plays in Kyber 1 in GAC and in, the 440 million GP range in Territory War, they affect me a lot.
Yes. That's sort of the point I was trying to make, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. So, your results may vary, first of all. And I'll talk about this a little bit in the next section in terms of game health. So I don't want to, give away everything that I want to say there. But let's just say that CG had to do something, and Datacrons were there something that they chose to do. And even though I personally well, I don't love Datacrons. I see their value. There are pros and cons to them, and they're a part of the game now, whether I like it or not. So I'm choosing to engage with them because the alternative is to just, completely go casual and not try to compete anymore, which is a valid option, and a lot of people have chosen that as well. But that's not something that I'm quite ready to do yet. So, I'm engaging with Datacrons the best I can. I'm trying to make them as fun as I can, and get the fun ones. And to me, the fun ones are mostly the ones that are more powerful. So it's a mixed bag for me. I can tell you that they've made GAC harder. because it's an extra level, like you were saying, Rem. It's another pay-to-play feature of the game, and so I don't think anybody else on this panel realizes how difficult it makes a GAC match when you open up the board and not only do you see all of the usual suspects like the JMK Datacron, the Ray Datacron, the Malgus Datacron, those are the three that are, oh, and of course the Jedi Knight Luke Datacron.
Yeah.
So those are the four big ones that you're seeing right now. But in addition, you also see those other teams, those A-tier teams like CLS and GAS, and they've got their own specialized Datacrons. And, now it takes a pseudo GL to take those out too. And, your opponent has all R8 and R9, everything already. So it's just that one extra layer that you have to overcome. Me as a 7.5 million GP player in Kyber 1, I routinely face a disadvantage, let's say, in, roster. And so this is just one extra disadvantage that I'm now facing. So that's, it is what it is. And I engage with them the best that I can. And they're part of the game now. So there you have it.
Yeah, and Lab, that brings up that's really, I think, the biggest thing that's come out of Datacrons is obviously, I think there's value. If you have a GL and you look at next month's, if you have SLKR, and next month comes out, they put out Conquest and they're like, SLKR has a Datacron. It's probably a good idea for your guild for you to go out and get it. If you put that on defense, it's probably going to work. But even we're seeing it, as good as that is, it's those kind of B tier, A tier, B tier teams that kind of at the higher level, which is really making a difference. It's the BAM and the CLS and GAS, and even Mon Mothma got hers, and kind of these teams that are rising up through Datacrons and becoming A tier or S tier. So for the mid tier players, I think if you have a GL and you see a Datacron for your GL, it's probably worth going for. But I think the really scary part is it's the other teams that are getting it and becoming S tier teams.
Yes.
And I don't, and as I was saying, so it's the investment. For most players, R7 CLS probably don't have, R7 BAM probably don't have, but at the higher end, people do have these, and so they are accessible, and the requirements for unlocking that power is already there. So, I don't know, that's kind of where the real power in Datacrons is coming, is from those A tier teams.
Yeah, and that's why I was sort of trying to kind of play things a little bit, because the reality is it's our top guilds that are really seeing the effect of this. Datacrons on the lower level, when you see, as you talked about, Meadulator, just a 3-tier Datacron on someone, it's going to help them and beef them up a little bit. But if you're running a strong counter, it's really not going to change the game. And for most of players within the guild or within our alliance, they're not turning into game changers. It's the upper ends that are really having to think through this and having to walk through this problem. It's not really at the lower end.
So one quick anecdote to underscore what Mead was saying. My latest GAC match that I just finished earlier today, I was at a 3 million GP disadvantage. This guy had a bunch of, super high relic teams, so I was already disadvantaged going in. But he also had a Datacron on CLS because his whole CLS team was R7, R8. And he had, the riposte on level 6. He had the Commander Luke assists on every other person's special, blah, blah, blah. So there was no way I could take General Grievous against it, which is my typical CLS counter, right? So I ended up having to take Lord Vader against it. Well, the problem is that completely shifts all of your matchups, right? Because you're taking a GL against a non-GL team. And so I ended up losing that match because I couldn't beat his R9, BAM, R8 Maul Mandalorian team. Because again, it had too high relics. Like I couldn't kill it with my BAM because my BAM was too low and his Maul was too high and blah, 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 blah. So like it's that little shift where it makes you change what counter you have to run in order to be successful at it. And when you're playing at the high end, those little changes, like if you can push your opponent to have to use a stronger counter against one of your teams, cascades all the matchups in your favor and you end up winning most of the time. So
Well, I think that as a whole, at least, especially when they first launched, like it was kind of a hard sell for people. Like, you need to invest the time, your resources, and everything, for these things that are going to make your teams better and everything like that. And I think there's a lot of people that didn't buy into that at first, and it was kind of maybe not explained the easiest as well when it first launched. So I think there was a lot of people that were turned off by that. And I think it's taken some time, especially probably for some of the less competitive guilds to buy into it, to see like how effective it actually is. And, to the point that Rim made earlier, like, I'll be the first to admit when they first came out, I was like, oh, this is dumb. But then when you start to see the effectiveness in TW and how it can make a team, pretty tough for anybody that doesn't know how to address it or doesn't have a Datacron to counter it, how effective it can be. So I think it's been sort of a slow building, and obviously as time goes on and different ones come out or whatever, I think it's going to evolve more. But I think up front, it's been kind of a hard sell for some people.
I think the good thing, though.
Go ahead. Mead had talked to us during our pre-chat that this is, remember, 1. We're not even at 1.0 yet. This is still them trying to figure out how to balance this properly. So there's room for it to grow. I don't want anyone to take away from this conversation that Datacrons are going to kill the game, and of course, Lab is going to talk to that soon. But I think they're still trying to figure out the balance and how to do this right.
And the other really good thing about Datacrons right now is, so we are about to lose our first set, and we do not know what the resource payout will be on what we have when they're destroyed.
Yes.
But mostly everyone will have a opportunity. Like if you have no Datacrons right now, and you're listening to this and you're like, oh, it's a 3-month process to catch up. It's not mods. This isn't like I didn't farm mods for 2 years. I'm never going to be able to catch up. If you didn't farm Datacrons for 3 months, it's okay. You just can start next month, and in 3 months, you will have as many as I have. Like, depending on how much extra resources I get from like kind of like the breaking down process, which will help me build the backup faster. But because of the cyclical nature and these rotating out, it at least allows players to catch up a lot faster, which is, I feel like a lot of guilds might be in a place right now. Well, even in our recruiting, we have people come in and they're like, oh, like my last guild didn't really push it. And we're like, okay, it's a good account. Like it's only 3 months. In 3 months, they'll be up and running if it's something they're willing to do, which I think is, people aren't falling behind quite so much with this as some of the other things that have been introduced, which I think has been nice.
Yeah, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, now the downside to that is if you need to R7 a character to use this, it will then go away after 3 months and you will still have a R7 character. So hopefully you are making the right decision on the characters you're bringing up to use the Datacrons with.
Yeah, I would say don't R7 an account just to be able to use it unless you're at the top end of the game.
Right.
that stay on course. I think that's the advice all of us always say is whatever your plan is for your roster, don't allow something like this to divert your plan.
Maybe a little bit. A couple. I brought some guys up from R4 to R5, right? Because you need to use the T6. Your whole team has to be R5. So I had some good characters that had been perfectly happy living at R4, and this whole like once Datacrons came out, now I have a Darth Revan who's R5.
Well,
because
let's be honest. R5 is the new R3.
Yeah.
Right. Which used to be the new Gear 12, which used to be the Gear 11, right? R5 is sort of the minimum level that CG expects all of our useful tunes to sort of be leveled up to.
Yeah, CPIC kind of was their way of telling us that.
Okay, so let's move on to the next conversation, which I think is one of the most important conversations of the night. Let's talk about the game health, Blab. Give us where you feel things stand, and you see it from the top level, like from the highest competitive level within the game. Where do you see things sitting at?
Sure. So it's a complicated question. So there's a lot of different nuances, but I'll try my best to give it a go here.
We all trust you on this.
As far as the overall health of the game, my opinion is that the game, for its age, the game is extremely healthy. Actually, it's so one of the metrics that is sort of more objective on this is the amount of money that CG is making on the game, because that tells you how engaged the spending players are. And let's be honest, if enough players decide to stop spending, then the game will go away. And that's, I don't think anybody on this panel or really in this alliance really wants that to happen. So I took this idea from Solabase. He on his podcast, he frequently fields a similar question. And so far, CG's still, even with Datacrons, they are making about the same amount of money as they were before Datacrons were introduced. So I know that there have been a lot of Chicken Little posts about the sky falling and the game jumping the shark, etc. But the data doesn't seem to play that out if you look at it in the aggregate. So the other data point that I've seen thrown around is the number of GAC players is shrinking, and so people are quitting the game. And yes, there's a small trend. I think Kyber 1 is getting smaller. Actually, all of Kyber. If you look at the numbers that are being compiled by people who keep these stats, the most well-known one is, her name is Taliana in the community. So if you search her name, you'll be able to find her the stats that she's been pulling. But basically, there have been a few less players in GAC, but nothing alarming. I think we saw a few people quit, but not enough to threaten the health of the game. And we've seen the usual at the top end. We still see guilds breaking up, and that's generally where we, as Mandalore, we tend to get our recruits from. Is people will reach out to us and say, "Hey, our guild is folding. Do you have room?" And that's why we have a waiting list right now. So really, I don't see the game being in any trouble anytime soon. Even though if you go onto Reddit or some of the other Discord forums, you might, or if you frequent Arnold's channel or whatever, you might get an opposite opinion. Now, if you take a moment to think about what Datacrons do to the game, and this is really, Datacrons, as much as I don't love Datacrons, if you think about the game as a whole, Datacrons were a very smart move by CG. And contrary to what you read on Reddit and some of the Discord channels, CG is extremely good at keeping this game healthy and still monetizing it. And so think about this giant problem that CG has, right? SWGOH is a 7-year-old mobile game. It has already vastly outlived the majority of its competitors in this genre. Okay, mobile games don't last this long, ever. There are a few exceptions. I think Clash of Clans might be one. But anyways, think about the problem that CG has, where they have a giant player base, and yes, there's a lot of spending that goes on at the top, but there is also a lot of spending that goes on in the mid game or even early game players who have bought the Hyperdrive bundle and want more. There's a lot of money that CG makes every month on those players. So the question is, how do you keep the game fresh and engaged? Engaging to those players and differentiate the game enough to where your late game players always have something to chase. They always feel like they're behind. And yet the early game players don't feel like they're so hopelessly behind. They'll never, ever be able to experience the game the way that late game players are playing right now. And that is a really, really tough design problem. And Datacrons are, well, I mean, CG has been going along this path for years now, right? Mods, 5-dot mods going to 6-dot mods, gear levels, G11, G12, relics. Relics were an ingenious move by CG a few years ago because they helped to solve the problem of giving those higher level players, the ones that have all the toys, something else to chase, because R8 and R9 are still prohibitively expensive for a moderate amount of gain. So like you get just enough gain to where you want to put R8 and R9 on your characters because they make them stronger, but not so much stronger that they completely invalidate another player who only has, R5 on his teams. Where you can still kill an R8 or R9 team with smart modding, choosing the right team with the right mechanics, etc., etc. You can still do that. So it's not completely out of reach of those players who don't have all the toys at the highest level. And yet there's still enough incentive for those higher level players to want to push those relic levels. So relics were a really, really ingenious design by CG, and Datacrons are just the next step. And so again, like we've been talking all night, the early game players don't really have to worry that much about Datacrons. They're not going to see them very much at all. If they do, it'll be one team that they see it on, and that's it. So they don't really change the game very much. But in the mid and late game, players have to start engaging with them, spending crystals, doing conquests, yada, yada, yada. They impact your GAC, they impact your territory wars. And as you level up in the game, your engagement with Datacrons also has to level up as well. They become more and more important to you. And so this is yet another way that CG has stratified the game and allowed players to engage the game at the level they're at, and to make sure that the game is engaging for players at all of those levels. So that was a very long-winded way of explaining my opinion, which is that Datacrons are actually good for the game, and they were kind of necessary for the game.
I'm gonna go into your conversation harder. Some of the most the events that CG had released in the previous years were brutal. It made even late game players go, man, this is just. I wanted new content, but I didn't want content like this. They were creating game modes such as, let's talk about it, light side TB. It's brutal. The amount of investment that you have to put in that late game just doesn't feel right for a mobile game. And so I think they were trying to come up with ways to make current game modes entertaining and fresh without creating some overpowered game mode that as of now, it takes 20 minutes to sometimes to complete a one battle in TB. That's not what you're playing a mobile game for. You want content, but you don't want content that stops being fun. So I'm not necessarily upset with the changes that they're trying to make to keep a competitive environment alive, but also understanding that we only have so many hours in a day that we can invest in a game.
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear if there's a different perspective on the health of the game. From Mead or Brax. How do you guys think CG is doing?
I can go ahead. I think this is smart. Like, I think so. First of all, they did a couple things, right? They gave us Datacrons, and then they gave us like a new ship and a new GL. And I think I think it like engaged everything we kind of wanted. I think the content that was coming out, Inquisitors weren't really what everyone wanted to spend their time farming.
God,
So I do think, like, just for Endor, like, I can tell you the Datacron channel in Endor is active. There is an engagement going on in our guild around these. Like, it is, we are showing up, we are caring, we're having conversations. This is something we're putting time into the game. And so that's important. And then I also think, like, they did kind of put out the new ship. They did, which should be coming out in a week. I think they're doing really well. Like you said, this is an old game. It is not easy to continually pump out content that makes people care. And I, like, right now, I am once again at a spot when I look at my roster and I look at the things that are coming out in this game, and I feel like there was multiple paths I could take right now on my account, and that speaks to the level that they're pumping. That speaks to the amount of stuff that is coming out into this game. So I'm excited. Like, I'm excited where the game is going. I'm excited to see Java. I want to see the new ship. I want to see what the Rebel fleets look like in 6 months.
Yeah, I don't have an opposing opinion. Just kind of to piggyback on what you guys have already said, like, the Star Wars universe has tons of, different unique characters and everything. But with that being said, like, it's not realistic that we're going to have this infinite amount of characters that we can, be introduced to the game and all that, things of that sort. So CG has to continue to be creative in the way that they keep it competitive, keep, newer people coming into the game, which, I think with the upcoming series that are coming up, I think you're going to see, a new influx of people. It seems like anytime that there's a new Disney series that comes out, Star Wars related, that there's a new influx of people joining the game. So, I think they are smart in that they keep the new people able to at least feel like they are as competitive as ones that have been playing the game for a long time. And there's not an infinite amount of characters that they can add to the game. So it's, how do we add things that can make, some of the characters that we already have, how do we make them better or make them relevant again? And I think that, as opposed to them as I was when they first were launched, that Datacrons actually will help in that aspect. So.
Okay, so let's move on to the final subject, and that is Omnicrons. Now, we've had this conversation before. Lev and I had a very spirited conversation between should you invest in Grand Arena or should you invest in Territory Wars? And ultimately, I think Lab made a good argument that there are some solid Omnicrons that should be invested in with territory wars, depending on your guild and what you're trying to accomplish. And then there are some in GAC that should take priority. As we get this conversation going, there's been a ton of new ones since we had that conversation. I mean, I can't even tell you how many we've had since that conversation. But I think we can agree, and I want to everyone's serious, quick, 3-second response. 50 RT, 5 RT, however we want to call them, is not worth it.
Agreed.
Yes.
Conquest, that was the first one they introduced, not worth it. You're going to get maybe 1 or 2 conquests worth of points out of it, and then he's going to just, as of what we know him to work with now, or her, whatever, is not going to be effective. The next comes up with territory battles. Now, I know there are arguments for a couple characters, specifically as we had talked about in our pre-chat. Rebel Officer Leia Organa and Finn could potentially be worthwhile, but that's very guild specific, where you're at. Territory battles can be worthwhile, but it really depends on what the goals of your guild are. Would you not agree?
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. So now let's start with, do you guys want to start with Territory Wars or Grand Arena? Because we're going to run through some of the most applied Omnicrons in these particular zones, because we can't go through them all. Are they worth it or not worth it? That's kind of the game we're going to play. Do you want to start with Grand Arena or Territory Wars?
I'm fine with either, but I think there's fewer territory war ones, so maybe we start there.
Actually, there is as many Territory Wars as there are Grand Arena.
Interesting. There must be more worthless TW ones then.
Yeah. Hera has entered.
All right, so we'll go through the Territory Wars first, because obviously there must be more worthless ones. So Territory Wars, Captain Phasma, worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to say that it's worth it because especially most new players, this is probably the first route you're going to take to a GL. Might as well get a great character for Territory Wars that will last the test of times, as we all can currently agree, correct?
So I'll say, I think, and like Lab will probably know more about this, but I think at higher end, Phasma does kind of phase out as a
Yes.
defensive team in TWs, but it is a good enough Omicron that you will still find value in it, even if it isn't that like classic, like, oh, Phasma wall somewhere on your defense.
Phasma is not a defensive character in Territory War for Mandalore or any guild in our, but she is awesome on offense. Like, I was lukewarm on her at the beginning, and then once we found out what she actually can beat, yes, get Phasma if you can. She's great.
Can you tell us what she beats or no?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. She beats.
What would you? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So she beats SKOJ. She beats Shock Bad Batch. She beats well, she used to beat Darth Revan. Now that Malgus is here, I think that's a little bit more questionable. She can beat some Rey teams. Not really with the Datacron right now, but and maybe Ben Swallow completely negates that in the future. But as of right now, there's some Rey teams that she can beat as well. So yeah, I mean, she beats really good teams.
I would argue for the new player, that's probably the number one Omnicron out there.
It's high on the list, yeah.
If
you're
you have
getting
SLKR,
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
Yeah.
So yes, it is, and we're not getting into that. I'm just thinking about the overall. Yeah. So number 2 on the list of territory wars for the most applied Omnicrons is Hera Syndulla.
Oh God.
No,
But that's just
I'm
new game
giving a
players,
no.
right?
Stop.
No, don't apply
Don't
Hera.
do that. They're a limited
Yes.
resource.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's a wasted resource. I know it's very tempting because that's a very, very highly promoted starting team, but you're not gaining much by putting the Omnicron on.
No.
Well, I mean, she's an R5 character, Lab,
Yes, she is.
right? Like, we're gonna end up with R5 rebels, maybe R7 rebels across the board.
No. See, her Omicron is so good that you only need Hera at R5. You can just take in the rest of your G8 Phoenix and it'll be great.
Right.
Yes. All right, so let's go next on the list of top placed Omnicrons is Mace Windu.
This I want to talk to Lab about because Mandalore, and I was looking at all the numbers earlier. Mandalore has no Mace Windus. You guys
No.
remember?
I think we have 4 of them.
Right. Okay. Well, when you have 40 plus of most of the other ones, 4 is the same as nothing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a no on this one just because there's what other use are you getting on it? He still does his whatever. I use him. I have an R5 version of him, and I don't need him to be his Omnicron doesn't help me much. This is one I actually have. I don't have the Omnicron. I have the character.
Yeah. So, Mace, he's a complicated discussion about Omicrons because there are several reasons. The first reason is because Datacrons have completely shifted and will continue to shift the meta in territory wars. So there was a point in time, and I think Arnold had, wrote a video about this, about how it was such a good one because it prevented, well, it didn't prevent, but it significantly reduced the chance that you can beat it with an off meta counter, or not an off meta counter, like a different GL. So JML, for instance, was a popular one, and Rey was another popular one to beat JMK. So you put Mace with his Omicron on JMK, and all of a sudden it gets really hard to beat him with C. It gets harder to beat him with Rey. It gets harder to beat him with JML. Blah blah blah. So there was a small point where he was coveted. But now that Datacrons completely changed all the matchups anyways and will continue to rotate in and out, there's not really a set team where Mace goes on. And so it's kind of one of those resources where he could be good situationally, maybe, but you can't really plan for him to be good every time. And so you just end up not applying it or not recommending it because there's other better options.
So that's
my struggle, is that you never know when you should use him or not.
Yeah. And so this is where I was going to go. A lot of these tunes that we're going to talk about as we move down are very situational. You need to have the right team to make them work. And if you don't invest in them. I mean, don't get off your gear plan because they may be very situational or may only work in the temporary situation, and it's a very coveted resource. So the next one.
Oh, hold on. Can I jump in? Because I want to say this. So I wanted to say this to Lab because Endor has 22 Mace Windus. Yep. So almost half our guild has Windu. And this was definitely, as Lab kind of said, this was a decision we made before Datacrons. Yep. So, I mean, he's obviously a very good character. And because of his nature as, a disrupting, right, he's helping you move past taunts. When we were placing him on defense, and it does help. It helps kind of with C, was the one matchup that it can help with because you can snipe armor before armor can go. Or at least put ability block on armor. So was the JMK wall is very important. not giving too much away. But JMK is very important on defense for in DWs for us. And so putting that there was something that it really beefed up our JMK wall. So that was like, I agree, it was definitely a decision we made before any GL, like depending on what gets released for a Datacron, any GL can beat any other GL next month. We don't know yet. It's a good Datacron. I think like we even find it, like we moved it over to JMLs when we started when we started using the JKL Datacron on defense. Mace kind of slid in there. He is a disruptor, and because of his nature of moving past taunts, it's very hard to start a battle against an Mace Windu and know what he is going to do. And that makes it a very hard matchup to predict how the first few moves are going to play out, because if he picks the tune you need to go and do something and he puts ability block on that tune, the next few turns in the battle might not go the way you want and can get a win, which is why having a lot of them is good, because it just kind of adds up and like kind of grinds out wins versus like shutting down something completely.
So I will lean into you. I am a Mace Windu fan, just because if you have a very diverse roster, he's for me a plug and play across my 3 Jedi teams that I run out there. It's really I guess I don't need him. He doesn't really elevate a team in a way, how I use him in a way that works for me. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't work for somebody else. He's very versatile. And I recommend people building him up. I'm just not sure the Omnicron is long-term worth it.
So I'll just say one last thing about Mason. I agree with your point, Mead, and I think that there are definitely good reasons to get, as a guild, to go out and get Mace. It's a good Omicron. It's just situational. And what I will say is that Mace Omicron is one character potentially, or maybe, one new team or a couple new character releases away from being an absolute must-have. If he gets that team, or if a team becomes a counter to another team, for instance, Jabba, hint, hint. If there's a team that you need his Omicron to, disrupt, maybe there's some stealth mechanics in the Jabba team that you need to dispel, because, he does a great job of that anyways. And, you need just the extra shatter points flying around everywhere to have enough oomph to get through the GL. That would be an instant, recommendation for Mandalore, I think.
Let's go for the new Ahsoka. All right. Next up on the list, and this one is, to me, very controversial. You guys may think otherwise, being up in the upper levels. Mara Jade.
It's a yes.
It's an absolute yes. She should be probably your first one.
Me and Raider were getting in trouble. We think this is the best Omicron in the game. Potentially. Or like the most important at all levels. So, sorry, I'll back that up. At any level, this is a very, very good Omicron. For like a 1 million account or a 10 million account, you're going to use this.
And I get why you guys say that. That's why I thought this would be one of the most controversial in the game. Because she is effective with her Omicron even at a low level, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Gear 8.
Yeah, Gear 8, she's very effective. The problem that you run into is most new accounts, it's making by building that team, you're taking it away from other focuses that you should be building into. Meaning that those tunes are more effective somewhere else. Or I shouldn't say more effective. You're just making another team pretty much worthless without them. So that's why I said this is a controversial one. I'm willing to accept that she's probably one of the most effective at low levels in the entire game.
Yeah, I mean,
I
if
feel
you
like
have, go ahead.
But should anyone be farming Mara Jade in early game?
If you have a Vader, if you
Yeah.
have Vader built up, then yes.
If you have the Zeta lead on Palpatine, you should have it. Like, you don't even need Vader. If you have a Zeta on Palpatine,
That's true.
you should get a 3-star Gear 8 Mara Jade, and your opponent will not take a turn. You can burn through like a decent sized Padme team by just pointing at like Kenobi and just continually shocking him. And the whole team will just melt over time. Like Mara Jade and Palpatine will just walk through all kinds of early game teams.
Yep.
And then throw in Vader.
Go and get Starker at some point, and she and Palpatine transition to that team. So it's every level of the game.
So you're recommending that people take a pause on whatever, very tight farming guide that they're running and get Mara Jade.
I would say, it depends on what your plans are, but if you have a Palpatine at like you said, then you should find a way to get Mara Jade.
I think
that's why
her kit is the most affected by the Omnicron. Like I don't think you can think of another character who minus the Omnicron and then adding the Omnicron is so much drastically different.
I would say Starkiller and GAC.
Yeah.
Well, so that's why I said this is very controversial. If you look over most guys out there, they do not recommend early players. They don't put Mara Jade anywhere in the farming aspect. Now, remember, if you're less than 1 million, you're likely not farming Omnicrons. You have to think about it in that term also. When can you realistically get an Omnicron?
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Fair.
I don't know when a player could expect to get their first Omicron.
Well, depends on if they spend money.
Well,
yes.
If
you're not
spend
spending money,
you're
not. You're looking probably at about a 2.5, maybe 2 if you're a very aggressive guild player before you're able to touch Omnicrons.
Maybe. It's hard for me to be able to go back to that time because the game is different now than when I was at that level. But I know there are some galactic challenges that are, doable with, purple gear stuff. Like you can at least get to box 7 or 8 where Omicrons are given out.
Yeah, but you're then looking at what?
Yeah, it's
9 months before you get your first Omnicron at best.
Yeah, it would be a very precious resource, and I would argue that you would want to put it on your GAC character first, anyways. When you do get those 20 mats saved up,
That's why I was saying this is very controversial because she's a great one of the highest. That's where honestly I don't have it there on her. I'm doing it next after my research. It's definitely my next Omnicron, even though it's TW and I tend to argue for GAC. But that's my next one. But it's kind of controversial. It's new players. This is a really hard one for them because they can easily get the character, but then do they spend money to get that Omnicron? Because it's going to take them some effort.
Well, I think you have to differentiate the question between, is Mara Jade worth going for in the early game? The answer is yes. Is her Omicron worth going for in the early game? Probably not. I wouldn't really think about getting her Omicron until I had some relic teams, or our territory war strategy revolved around a wall of them. But you shouldn't ever feel bad about putting that Omicron on her when you do decide to do it. It's a forever type of Omicron.
You'll appreciate it.
Again, that's why I stole this here. I thought that was a really good conversation, that a character that we needed to talk about. The next few, I think we can move over really quickly. Darcidius.
No.
No.
No. Juhani.
Absolutely yes. If you have SK.
Yeah,
And RJ.
that's super situational.
I'm saying no. Yes, maybe it's useful at times, but you're likely to have a better option available.
Depends on what level you're at.
Yes. Most people who are first going to unlock Juhani, they're going for Revan and Drevan. She's going to be on a secondary team. Those characters are not going to be relic. They're going to be somewhere around gear 12. I think by then you probably have better options.
Yeah, you don't start thinking about Juhani until you have both Starkiller unlocked and relic, and you have Mara Jade Omicron. That's when you start thinking about Juhani.
And that's pretty late game because
usually.
Yeah. And remember, I'm thinking this as the general, you guys are giving your guild's advice on a personal level. We're talking to the public. Chief Nebbit.
No.
No.
I don't know what he does.
he takes 20 of your Omicron mats and says,
Aha!
He makes your officers angry.
Yes, that's right.
Understand, that's the 7th most Omnicron character in Territory Wars.
Yeah, people are casual. What can I say?
Well, this will really offend you. Number 8 is Imbo.
Imbo is actually sneaky good,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
Oh, you're one of those Imbo fans, aren't you?
No, I mean, he's terrible outside of Territory War, honestly. Well, 3v3, he's like kind of relevant-ish. But yeah, his Omicron is actually not bad. You just have to have a pretty high investment in bounty hunters, blah, blah, blah. None of you guys are going to use it. I don't even use it. I think we have one person in our guild who uses it. He loves it, though.
Yes. All right. So number 9, we're going to skip and get back to because I'm kind of stopping on the. Okay. We're going to do a couple more and then I'm going to just kill everything. So
Yep.
Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's good.
I started farming her shards the second it came out.
What team are you running her with? That's what
Nobody.
Herself. She's Wampa. She just like when we talk about Wampa and GAC, that is Fulcrum.
Oh boy.
That's so you're basically saying she should be rated higher.
She's how do you say this? It's a good Omicron. She kills certain specific teams. It does require a pretty high relic investment and decent mods to do it. But like Wampa, you're using one character and their Omicron to kill an entire team of 5, right? So it's really efficient.
You're saying it's a high mid to high level player sort of Omnicron.
I think it really depends. If you like Ahsoka, then you should get and you like Territory Wars, you should probably gear her and get this. Like put her at R5 to R7. She will kill. Like there are a couple of pretty strong teams in Territory Wars that she'll kill all by herself, and you'll have a ton of fun doing it because she does all the fun stuff. Like she like can't be debuffed. She turns debuffs into offense. She ignores taunts. She deletes people with one move. It's really cool.
She's great against dark side teams.
Yeah, anything with debuffs.
Yeah. You don't want to send her against GL Vader or anything.
No. I mean, there's plenty of teams that she just can't handle. I'm not, but specific situations, and at pretty much any level, you'll find a way to use her. Like even at the very top level, if your opponents decide, all right, we're not gonna set any of these, teams that she typically solos, you'll still kill a dash team for 20. So like, I don't know. She's good. There's a lot of more intricacies to her about like whether you should get her or not at the top level. But yes, she's good. If you like Ahsoka, get it.
All right. So I'm going to try to run through this faster. T3M4. Security actually have leveled up very high because of the early days when General Grievous got reworked. I haven't popped the trigger on the Omnicron. I'm not sure on it. I've heard good things and there's some negative things about it.
Wait, which army are we talking about?
T3M4.
Oh. It's a
I
pass
have to
for me.
yeah. I don't even know what it does.
Yeah.
It's another no.
In a nutshell, it makes Grievous like kind of better on defense a little bit, but if you're, I don't know, if you're setting Grievous on defense, you're probably not really
early to mid guild.
Yeah, you're probably not that serious about territory war. So why invest in Omicron? That's not that interesting for minimal gain. It's a pass.
I would argue that if you're using T3M4, that you're probably off farm set in terms of how the new best farming method is going. At one point, he had a place, but a lot of people have that tune at Gear 12. There was one point where he got in the meta. But yes, I would agree with you that that's probably a no. And then, before we get to our final, I'm going to throw down two. Well, first, I'm going to just talk about the Inquisitors and say, yes, no. It's not worth it, especially in early game, late game. I know you guys may say that there's a place for them, but they're a B-level squad at best that costs a shit ton of Omnicrons to make work.
Well, they cost a lot of gear to gear up. That's a huge factor. You can make a great Grand Inquisitor squad with just one Omicron in Territory War, so it's not that cost prohibitive. You don't need any of the other ones.
Each character has one.
Yeah, but don't put Omicrons on any of the characters besides Grand Inquisitor. Let's put it that way.
All right. Farm Boy Luke. In general, we can all say no to, right?
I'm only saying no because I don't have any clue what it does.
It takes 20 Omicron mats from your account.
Yes. All right. So, and I wouldn't have talked about this one, but I have to. Boba Fett, Sengo, Scion of Jango. It's 3 Omicrons to make him effective, correct?
No, it's not 3.
Well, he has 3 of them.
He does have 3 of them. You only need 1.
And is he really effective?
I beat Lord Vader with him in TW.
All right.
Yeah, for me, I went out and got the whole team because of that, because of what he does in TW.
God, that just feels like a waste of resources.
It's a fun thing to run.
Yeah, and Fennec is amazing.
Yep.
All right, so let's move to Grand Arena because we're I think already pushing an hour and a half, so we need to get this through. Qui-Gon Jinn is a yes from me.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wampa, yes from me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chief Chirpa, no from me.
No.
Zam Wessel, really a no from me, but some people really can say yes about her.
It's a yes.
She's good. Go ahead, Mead.
No, I was just anyone who shares stats the way she does and adds speed the way she does, on a team that you already have geared up is going to be like, that's something you should be looking for. She's a GL requirement. It makes bounty hunters extremely fast, which means they can get their contract off very quickly.
My argument is yes, if you have two bounty hunter teams. I think there's a better bounty hunter team without her involvement.
Depends on what you need to do, but she is crucial in providing enough speed for a lot of the counters where you're punching up, like against SK, where you're going against Mara Jades with effective like 430 speed. You have to have Zam. You can't reach those speeds without her.
I could see that.
Yeah. The thing about Zam though is she's awesome in 5s and she's pretty mediocre in 3s. Mediocre to not great in 3s.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
All right. I didn't Verso.
What do you think, Mead?
I have a complicated relationship with Iden. So when I went to Kyber, I needed teams. Like I was under 5, I was like 4.5 mil. All of a sudden they're like, you need whatever, 40 teams or some nonsense. And so I was like, I looked at my roster and I was like, if I put Omnicron on Iden, I don't have to do anything else. I can just put it out there and maybe it'll take something. I wish I could get those 20 mats back from where my account is. I think the people who are putting a Gear 8 3-star Iden team out there, they will come to regret it. I think she's very, very good if you're going to invest in the team.
So it goes back to my point. I about some of these. I think it's a very good Omnicron. Omnicron, if you have the depth and you need, there's a better team without her. But if you have a secondary team that needs some extra punch, I think that's where she fits in.
So if you have the troopers that go with her team geared up to say like G11 or G12 across the board, then yes, it's a yes for me. But if you're like me and don't even have some of them like past level 1 because you just, haven't had the resources because you've been chasing GLs and other meta teams, then obviously it's a no. But she can she can punch up with that Omicron. She can kill like Mon Mothma. She can kill a full Relic Monma team with just like G11 with her Omicron. So, I mean, it can't be a good investment, but just mind what your levels are.
Yeah, so that was my point. I have a imp team that is, the what you want, and then I have 3 or 4 leftovers. So I have been thinking about her just because I might be able to put her with the leftovers and take down some mediocre stuff. By the way, my leftovers are, we're talking Gear 12 relic range. So it's something I've been thinking about, but I still think I have better priorities on my roster than that.
Yeah, she's close to luxury. I think she's very close to that line. She's good, she's powerful, but she's pretty close to luxury for most people.
All right, so first order TIE fighter pilot. I have no clue on this one. I've never faced it. I have a TIE fighter pilot that I could put it on, but I just don't see how it's really going to benefit my roster based upon how I use it. So I really don't have an opinion on this one.
Mead, why don't you, if you have an opinion on it, why don't you go ahead and say it?
Okay, so if you care about GAC and you have SLKR and you're using SLKR with a first order team, so you're not doing the Night Sister Watt to try to beat Lord Vader. If you're setting that and you have a second first order team that has kind of the leftovers, if you put this on, that team will be much, much better, and it will it will either trip people up or take a hard, like it will take a better team to counter than your opponents are using. So I would say if you have SLKR and you're in the early game and you're looking to improve in GAC, it is a good Omicron. I'm going for SLKR right now. I am skipping it, but that's just like where my roster is and what I'm looking at. But if this is SLKR is your first GL, I think it makes a lot of sense.
So I would disagree on some level. If you're in early game, just run SLKR with its, the because you invested so much. And if you're in early game and it's your first GL, you run the crappy first order with that SLKR, and then you put the Omnicron on Phasma, and you run a great secondary team that I think is better than first order TIE Pilot. I think it's a better option. That's why I'm kind of curious of what you guys think on it. I think late game, you have so many better options. I don't think it's a place you put an Omnicron.
Well, just hold on. That's like Phasma's TW, right? This is for GAC. So
Yeah.
what are your two splits? Like, what are your splits in GAC? You should have two first order
I get
teams.
what you're saying. This is Grand Arena. The other one's TW. You are correct. You could put it on there. I still think you would run. I'm sorry. You would run. I'm sorry. I'm blanking. The tanky the other the other leader, the other
Like crew?
Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
You run him as the leader, and it's better. You don't need it, is my point. Early game. I could be wrong.
So it depends. Like if you're a player who rushes SLKR, right? So like you have 11 relic characters and they're all first order. And you've been able to do some galactic challenges, or maybe you spend a little bit of money and you've got 2 Omicrons. And there's no other characters that you have on your squad that are going to be available like to utilize an Omicron for a while. You're going to be able to build up your stash a little bit in the meantime. And I think what Mead is saying is go ahead and put it on first order TIE Pilot because and put the other one on Phasma for TW. Like, so you're utilizing the strengths of your roster.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. Whereas, like, if you have a more, if you're getting towards mid game and you've got some options, it's a consideration for sure. And, depends on how you like to run your first order in Grand Arena. Because the issue I have with first order TIE Pilot, I've considered getting him, but the issue is that he kind of boxes you into how you have to use or set up your first order, right? So you either need to hold them all for offense, or you put certain squads on defense that are kind of just like you have to put those squads on because you have that Omicron. It's a pretty good Omicron in 3v3 if you have the team modded and reliced up super high. You can take out something like SK, who's a menace in 3s with it, but that's very specialized.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. I don't have it, and I'm probably not going to get
it. Again, running through kind of quickly as Saj Ventress, I say that's a no. That's just from a guild building or a roster building perspective. It's not bad. I just say a no from me.
If you like Night Sisters, get it. If you don't like Night Sisters, ignore it.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I am too.
Admiral Ackbar. This one's complicated because it does speed up your ships.
No, Omicrons don't affect. No, they don't affect ship stats. That came out right away because, or else we'd be having different conversations right now with some of these.
Yeah, for sure.
It amazes me it's this high because, and maybe it's because a lot of people do think it speeds up ships because it shouldn't be this high.
No, I think it's just an early game tune. You get the
Yes.
ship, you get the like. This is like at the end of the day, most of the players in this game are not in K1 and K2. So
Yep.
these are like, and I've seen them. The Princess Leia like Ackbar team. It doesn't hold. You just beat it. I don't know. I just use whatever's like I still have and I win.
Yeah,
It doesn't hold.
Nest
I
Solo.
Yeah.
I had beaten it with a basic bounty hunter team. I don't know.
Yeah.
It-
It's a
it
no.
could be-
It's not a long-term investment.
Yeah, so I'll say there's one guild member in our guild that has both Ackbar and Princess Leia armies, and you can make a good team with it, especially on defense. That can trip some people up if you're not like in super high cover one. But it takes other premium rebels to do it. You have to put in Chupio, you have to put in like Han and Chewie as the other three. So it's like, do you really need that when you just like can have a CLS team instead? Not really.
Okay,
Agreed.
so you already mentioned Princess Leia. That's a no for me. I'm guessing.
Yeah. She goes hand in hand with Ackbar. Yeah.
I'm gonna say the next 4 on the list are yeses, but realistically, you need to be more late game. And that's Star Killer, Dash Rendar, Darth Talon, and Darth Malagans.
There's mixed. That's a mixed bag.
It's just acquiring them is not likely in early game or mid game, even.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously you can't put Omnicrons on characters you don't have. So,
Exactly.
but Starkiller is unique. Should be like your first DAC Omicron if you have him for some reason.
If you
Better.
have him
Yeah.
and were able to attain him, Dash Rendar is actually, his Omnicron is good if you have him. It's usable. Darth Talon, there are many circumstances where she's usable, but I'm just saying there are a lot more by the time you get here, likely more important Omnicrons.
So there needs to be some differentiation on that list. Darth Talons is maybe one of the, well, no, I shouldn't say that. Outside of a very few players in this game, Darth Talons is not important at all because
Yeah.
she only works with Sith Trio. So people shouldn't be applying that one, at least not yet. Maybe she becomes important for a counter later, but right now she's so ingrained in the Malgus team that I just don't apply that Omicron. It's not worth it. Dash is pretty good, but again, that's a very late game Omicron. Like you need Vandor Chewie and L3 and like YOLO and Kira.
Yeah, a bunch of tunes you should not be farming in early or even mid game.
Yeah, it's a very late game team. And by the time you get them, there will probably be much better Omicrons. So Dash is, I mean, it's strong, but it's mostly a no.
Malgus, definitely a late game team. There's only a few players I think that actually have them.
Mead, what do you think about Malgus Omicrons?
I mean, I have been very happy with the lead. It's chewed up all kinds of like counters that I've seen. So I've been placing it mostly on defense. It always has been taken, either it holds or it takes a GL. I would highly recommend lead. It's the unique is next. I don't know about the unique. How further I'll invest in Malgus.
Yep.
But yeah, like the lead for sure. Like the lead goes on immediately to everyone who has him. He is an extremely good tune.
Yep. That's where I am too. And the unfortunate thing about his special right now is that the Datacron that's out, basically, like he'll never use that special Omicron if you have the good Datacron. So we kind of have to wait 3 months for that to phase out to see if the special is going to be actually good. And the unique, yeah, it looks good. I haven't applied it yet. I only had the lead myself. Because you know, there's always the balance of, do I make this team that I already have better, or do I like create basically a new team from thin air because I got an Omicron? So finite
And
resource.
how many Omicrons we need to hold at any one time in case
Yes.
a new one comes out that is more
Exactly.
important.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the thing about this whole conversation is that we can have this conversation in a month and opinions might be different because, I mean, who knows what's going, and especially like with Malgus is that it's so new that I'm not sure that it's fair to even give a complete opinion yet because, you know, not everybody knows exactly how they're going to use him.
Yeah, I can tell you early results. If you have him and you relic him, put his lead Omicron on for sure, and then we'll see about the others.
Yeah, he has 3, so
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure them out. All right, so now we have one last really conversation because we can all say do not drop an Omnicron or on Tusken Raider or Rose Tico. Actually, Tusken Raider is sort of interesting. I'm not gonna lie. I honestly could see places. Trust me, I could kill that team very easily, but it's still a fun Omnicron. So maybe that is one we should talk about.
I mean, if you have all 3 Tuskens geared, then it's a consideration. But it's also
Yeah.
a 3v3 Omicron. So, like,
Yeah.
how important is 3v3 to you? That's
That's
the
my
question you
point.
got to ask first.
Have you faced it, Lab? Have you faced this team yet?
I have never faced a
Yeah,
Tusken
same.
Omicron. It's pretty rare.
I have faced it, and it was actually really easy to beat. I fortunately looked at what was sitting up in front of me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. So I need to have AoE and be able to kill all of them at once." It did make me rethink through my roster of what I had available. I didn't have to throw something heavy though, but it does make you rethink through what you're gonna do. Okay.
It's only, I would call it, it's one of those like sneak attack Omicrons in that you probably never faced it before, so you don't know exactly what to expect. So if you could, if somebody was not paying attention or whatever, like it would probably be beneficial there. But other than that, not useful.
It's actually probably pretty solid on offense because you can choose how to use it. Okay.
That's the only place to use it, really. Now that it's been out, yeah.
All right. So the last tune in this conversation before we start to wrap up this entire podcast is Star Killer.
He's good.
Yeah, I wish I had one.
He's very, very good.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Apparently, not many people have Star Killer.
Yeah.
You look at this list of Omnicrons, and there are some really tough tunes to get. For instance, Scion, uh, Boba Fett. There are more people that have Omnicron that than Star Killer, and I think that's probably some of the better Omnicrons out there.
It's just it's a problem with scarcity of the character.
Yeah.
Boba Fett was a conquest character, and like he's been rotated out for a while, so like you got the secondary chance to get him through the conquest that followed him too. So like more people had a chance to get him. Star Killer is like he's a new farm. Like none of his prerequisites have even gone to accelerated yet. So that's why that's why he shows up so low on the list, is because there's more people with Boba than there are with Star Killer.
That's fair enough. So he's got 3.
Yes.
Omnicrons. Is it worth 3 to make him work?
Well, he only needs the
Apparently,
unique.
there's really one that's prioritized, but
Yeah. Well, I can say I've had mine for a while now, and yeah, I only have his unique Omnicron because it's really the only one that you absolutely need. The other two are definitely luxury. His unique is like what? So like you don't run him as a leader. He's not a leader. His unique gives bonuses that are like a leader ability, a really powerful leader ability. So like you run another character like Emperor Palpatine as the leader. So you get his leader plus you get Starkiller's unique, which is like another leader on top of it. So that's one of the reasons why he's so strong. But you have to have that unique Omicron in order to get those bonuses.
Yeah.
The other two are definitely luxury. I'll say his Force Repulse, the one that dispels debuffs and does more damage. Situationally, it can make some of your matchups better. Like you can kill Rays better. You can definitely kill SLKRs better. But you don't need it.
Right. I think we have covered the Omnicron conversation for the most part by individuality, but I will say a lot of the advice that we've given regarding this subject is subject to your roster. Like, everyone needs to understand that Omnicrons are probably one of the most finite resources that we have in the game. And you have to be very careful that the tune that you're putting it on is one that will benefit your actual roster, not in the short term, but in the long term. You have to have the right characters to work with them, which requires a little research to figure out. Anyone disagreeing?
Nope.
No. I think we came to the realization there that not necessarily were Omnicron bad for particular characters, but they were very situational. So, it might not be a good decision for Lab to put it on, but maybe it is for somebody else, or vice versa. Like very, very situational.
Yep.
Yeah, that was sort of what I ran into when I was looking over, preparing for this episode, all these lists of the best Omnicrons in the game. They were all over the place, which is really interesting because Zetas weren't necessarily in that same realm. A lot of Omnicrons really require the right team to maximize their power. And so you need to actually dig into your roster, figure out what will work best for you, what won't. Feel free to contact your officers, the Alliance network of incredibly smart people. That's my recommendation. And that's kind of where I'm going to end the Omnicron conversation, unless anyone has any more points.
The TB Omicrons will be a lot better when they release the new ones. When we get the Endor TB coming up, we're all going to have those Finn Omicrons.
Endor TB confirmed by Meadulator.
Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow, you're throwing it out there. Gosh, next thing I know, Lab will be eating pineapple on pizza.
Well, like Darkside TV's done. People are just autoing it. It's over.
It's great. I love it.
Okay, so let's finish this on a personal. Your favorite taco? Gonna start with you, Brax, just because I want to save Lab for last. He needs to think about this. Your favorite taco?
Favorite taco? It's a toss up between a a fish taco or maybe a shrimp taco.
Okay, so a sea taco is what you want.
Sure.
Mead?
No, I like chicken. Chicken, black beans, spicy.
Yeah, I'm all about the nice Southwest tacos. I'm probably going to go with either brisket or chicken, but I'll take chicken with some good spices in it. Yeah, that makes me happy. All right, Lab.
Undoubtedly the best taco. This is for you, Mangry, by the way. The best taco, and there's really no argument about this, is a deep dish pizza taco.
with pineapple.
Yes.
Yeah, throw some pineapple in there just for good measure, to sweeten the deal. But yeah,
That was a question just perfectly set up for Mangry. We miss you, man. Hey, so this was a great conversation. I enjoy you all showing up. Thank you so much. I think the Alliance and the Guild and the Greater Republic will enjoy this.
thanks for throwing it together, Ram. Appreciate it as always.
No, I didn't throw it together. You did. I just moderated this.
Well, thank you for moderating then, and thank you, Lab, for throwing this together.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
thanks,
you,
Lab.
Lab. You did a great job. Appreciate it.